It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. I'm excited to talk with my guest today. Joining me is Peter Strohkorb, international business speaker, author, mentor, coach, and author of a new book, a relatively new book called The OneTEAM Method, How Sales and Marketing Collaboration Can Boost Big Business. And we're going to talk about that today because, sales productivity is an interesting issue. And listeners of the show know it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. But it's also an issue that's sort of clouded in uncertainty. And my guest today, Peter Strohkorb, has developed a new approach, I guess, to say how do we get sales and marketing to work together to boost sales productivity. So Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy. Great to be here.
So as you might tell from Peter's accent, he's joining us from Sydney, Australia today. So how are you? How are things down there today?
Things are great because I'm actually calling you from the future. So it's already Friday here and we're in just the beginning of what we call autumn and you guys call fall. And it's going to be pretty warm weather today, unlike I hear where you are.
Yeah, a little chilly here in New York today, but I'm escaping to the West Coast tomorrow, so I'm going back to the place where it's warm. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, how'd you start in your career, and how'd you get to the point where you consult with companies around the world and talk internationally, and have written this book about sales and marketing collaboration?
Yeah, well, thanks, Andy. I've spent more than 15 years working for some very large multinational organizations like Sony, Canon, 3M, and CSC. And throughout that time, I noticed that the sales team and the marketing don't really communicate that well with each other, and they talk more about each other than to each other. And it's always bugged me how that disconnect is really inefficient and wastes a lot of time, effort, and resources on both sides, really. And I decided to do something about it. But before I actually did quite a bit of research into the subject, and I found there's lots and lots of stuff about sales, and there's lots and lots of stuff about marketing, but there's not a lot of stuff about sales and marketing working together beyond the, basically lip service saying, oh yeah, guys, work it out. And I had this wonderful quote from the inventor of spin selling, Neil Rackham, who read my book and said that I've developed a methodology that actually goes beyond the usual guys just work it out that the CEO says to the head of sales and the head of marketing. And it's really astounded me that there's no formal methodology around, seemingly, that actually puts the two teams on the same page and gets them working together harmoniously. Now, I created the OneTEAM Method that actually helps them do that. But the distinction about the OneTEAM Method is that it's not predicated on primarily technology, because there's a lot of technology vendors that come to it from their perspective, and they say, just put our technology in, put our app in, put our license in, and everything will come magically good.
If it's broken before, it's going to be broken after. So it's
well, there's an old saying that if you automate a broken process, it's still a broken process.
Exactly.
Right. So the philosophy of the OneTEAM Method is that if you have a communication problem between people, and in this case it's marketing and salespeople, but it goes more broadly than that. If you have a communication problem between people, it's not something you solve with technology first and foremost. You've got to actually address it in the people domain.
All right. So before we do that, let's sort of talk about the underlying premise, which is that you think that a way to lift sales productivity is with this collaboration of sales and marketing. So first question I have is, how do you define sales productivity? So if you're going to boost sales productivity, what is sales productivity? Because I think everybody thinks they know, but I bet you they don't.
Look, let's just say my definition of sales productivity is anything that helps to sell faster or to sell more. We've got this term now. We've had the term sales enablement for a while. It's now migrated to the term sales acceleration. And so we're all looking for ways to speed up our sales process, to close the customer more quickly and to have more sales in the same time frame, so that we can achieve the growth that we're all looking for, both in terms of revenue and in profitability. The sad thing though is that the salespeople are still looking at just the salespeople, and the marketing people are still looking at just the marketing people. And Andy, your own podcast is really a testimony to that. Insofar as you've got all these people coming on, looking at how can we accelerate sales, and how can we do this, and everybody's got a different answer, and everybody's got a different angle on it, and it's all worthwhile. The thing that strikes me though is that nobody says how can we get more out of marketing to help sales achieve their sales faster, quicker, better, and more effective, and keep the customer happy in the same vein, so that they come back and buy more from us. So
you just need to stay tuned, because we've got lots of those people coming on the show.
Excellent, good. I'm glad to be the first.
Actually, you're not, but you're a part of a series of people that are going to be on the show to talk specifically about sales and marketing and how do they work better together. We've had Joe Polizzi from the founder of the Content Marketing Institute, Ardith Albee. We've had a number of people.
Yeah, I went to a conference in America a couple of years ago, and there were all sorts of booths there and people offering their different wares, ranging from coaching to messaging to various kinds of technology. And each of them, probably not surprisingly, I suppose, but each of them was promoting their particular offer as the panacea to bringing sales and marketing together.
Yeah. Well, if that existed, it would have happened a long time ago. I mean, it's become almost biblical in nature. But so, getting back to the question about productivity. So I sort of agree. I mean, I think that to me, sales productivity needs to be measured in the same way productivity is measured. So what's productivity? How's productivity measured? Productivity is measured as a unit of output for a certain investment of input, right?
Yeah, or period of time. Yeah.
Right, or period of time. So who measures sales that way? So really, if that's the case, it's the ultimate measure of sales productivity is what are the dollars, or whatever denomination of money you have, but we'll go with dollars since we both talk dollars. What's the number of dollars you produce per, let's say, hour of selling time?
Yeah, or per month or per quarter.
Well, I think it has to be very finite, right? So because a lot happens. You're unlikely to get an uninterrupted week or uninterrupted month of selling time, but you'll get 1 hour of selling time from somebody. And so if you can really understand how many hours it takes, an investment of a salesperson's time or sales team that are devoted to a particular account, how many of the hours of their time takes them to get the prospect from the point they first engage with them to the time they get an order, or they lose an order, they get a decision, but hopefully they win that order. So what is that unit of productivity? And I think if we can say, look, gosh, let's look at that, and then say, let's apply marketing, as you want to talk about here, is how do we apply marketing to, and there's lots of ways, as you'll tell us, is to make sales more productive, to make that, sell more faster, in essence, but really it's not as much faster as much as the unit of time. Then that's a great outcome. So definitely excited to hear about that from what you're going to talk about. So what are the top sales challenges that marketing can help with?
Okay, so there's sales challenges and there's marketing challenges. My definition for marketing, so let's start at the basics. My definition for marketing is to create an environment where sales can occur.
Okay.
So that means that marketing is there to create a brand that people are drawn to promote the thought leadership that we are offering, so that buyers can become interested in our services, products, or offerings, and direct the interested parties towards the sales team for them then to move the act to the pointy end of transaction. So if you imagine an upside down triangle, or the traditional funnel, then sales is really there to attract the buyers to us, and marketing is there to attract the buyers to us, and sales is there to take them over and then lead them to the pointy end of transaction, where money then drops off and we got a customer. So that's my definition for sales and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you look at that, that's not a homogeneous process, because there's all sorts of aspects that sort of sit in the grey area between sales and marketing that come into play. And then there's the other thing that is in the era of the buyer's journey, whereby the buyer is now in charge of accelerating the process or slowing it down, depending on how they feel. And because there's a lady at Gardner, Bova, what's her first
Tiffany Bova.
Tiffany Bova, that's right. She gave a great speech in San Francisco at Sales 2.0, where I spoke as well. And she was basically flooring all the sales managers in the auditorium, because she was saying forecasting is dead. And her premise was forecasting is dead because the buyer decides when they want to buy, and you can't predict that. They can stop there's no linear sales process any longer. They can dip in, they can dip out, they can choose to just take a break, they can choose to go back and forth within the sales process. So the old process does no longer apply, and it's now the buyer's journey, and they're in charge, and therefore you can't forecast your sales.
That's always been the case. Why do we think this was a mystery or a revelation to sales managers in that room? Did they think that they ever had control over the customer buying? I mean, this is one of the things that's throughout the length of my career, that's longer than most people, and I've sold everything from very small stuff to complex communication systems worth tens of millions of dollars. And almost never did the customer, make that decision to buy in front of us, right? They were on their own. They were on their own time frame. And it's ever been thus. Why do you think that was such a surprise?
Well, in the days of the traditional sales cycle, we used to think that it was the salesperson that was in charge of driving the sale forward, and that they would smooth the waters for the customer to walk through and purchase. And that's why sales forecasting became so prevalent and a standard way of operating.
That's why discounting became prevalent.
Look, we can talk about this forever, because I have a lot to say about the end of quarter, end of month.
Right. Well, I mean, that's why discounting became so prevalent, is that
and we've
you had to make a forecast, and we trained the customers to expect it. Of course.
Exactly. We've trained the customer to expect that and aim for that now, and basically that we now have sales that last. I'm talking about discounting sales that last $365 days a year. You can walk into any midtown shopping center and you find a permanent for sale sign up there. So spring sale, mid-season sale, end of season sale. it's all an eternal sale now.
So I didn't mean to get distracted on that, and digress on that. But so. Yeah. So let's get back to, you define the sort of the relevant roles and respective roles of sales marketing in the funnel. Yeah. It seems to me that one place where marketing really makes that huge contribution is hopefully collaborating with sales to come up with what that buyer's journey looks like, starting with defining who it is they're selling to.
Exactly. Yes.
So take us through that process. How do you get them to start working together to define sort of a common journey for the buyer?
Okay, so the key word there is working together, and what I've seen in many organizations is that marketing comes up and says, okay, we're marketing to this target segment, and therefore this product should suit them, and we have these messages that we're going out with, and that should attract the buyer to us. In the meanwhile, the salespeople have a different experience and a different slant on the same thing, and they put out their own messaging that they think will work better for them, and you end up with this disjointed message. So you're absolutely right, Andy, that we need to align our messaging between the marketing messages that go out, predominantly on the internet and on through the website, now increasingly through social media, and the messaging that the customer hears once they make contact with a living, breathing human being, that their messaging is consistent and absolutely in line with what the customer read on the internet throughout their buyer's journey.
Which we know oftentimes isn't.
Exactly. So the question then is, how do we do that?
Right.
And this is where the OneTEAM method says, well, let's start with the people working out, if necessary, that working together is a good idea. So you say, marketing, what's in it for you if you work with sales? sales what's in it for you if you work with marketing. It's not a matter of the CEO saying, guys, just work it out and get this CRM package and everything will be fine. It's a matter of them actually sitting together and saying, how can sales help marketing to do better, and how can marketing help sales to do better? So once you've crossed that challenge of why should we work together in the first place, because I tell you what, there's a huge chasm between sales and marketing in some organizations where marketing is just seen as the events and brochure people, and
or the Antichrist,
and vice versa, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Sales is the devil for sure. So we got one sort of key question here I want to address, then we'll go take a short break. So that come together between sales and marketing. Let's say CEO says, hey, we need this to happen. This is a priority. Okay. And there has to be a facilitated meeting of some sort, right? How do you set that agenda for what that meeting is? Who runs that meeting? Because, left to their own devices, people would come into a room and, be like the two Koreas negotiating, right? So what's going to happen? Who's going to make something happen? Who's going to be the driver for that process to make this collaboration start to happen?
Okay, so this is where the OneTEAM method is quite clever insofar as it takes us away from an environment of finger pointing and saying it's your fault marketing because you're not giving us good leads, and it's your fault salespeople because you're not following them up. There is actually a methodology that asks intelligent, constructive questions of both teams and says, why don't you do these things? And it's a very subtle way.
Give an example of the questions that are asked.
Okay, well, so one example would be, do you have an intermediator between sales and marketing to make sure that the communication exists on a daily basis?
And
is there a central repository for your salespeople to find all the marketing collateral that they need when they need it in the right place at the right time? Not some black hole sheds folder where everything goes in and nothing comes out, but actually a useful tool. Does sales have a good understanding of the marketing objectives? Does marketing have a good understanding of the sales objectives? It's very straightforward, simple questions like that are designed to create a dialogue and to actually want people to say, we don't have that. Why don't we have that? It's just a conversation starter, but it's one that gets you away from that finger pointing and makes it about how can we do better rather than why we're doing so poorly.
Okay. Well, I want to come back and dig into that just a little bit more. So we're going to come back after our break, talk with my guest, Peter Strohkorb, and we're talking about sales marketing collaboration, not alignment, but a collaboration to boost sales productivity. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Andy. Connect and Sell is used by sales reps at nearly 1,000 companies, including hundreds of technology startups and several Fortune 500 companies, to overcome the challenges of getting prospects on the phone. Companies using Connect and Sell grow their revenues faster by enabling their sales reps to have more sales conversations in 90 minutes than they could otherwise achieve in an entire week. Connect and Sell can be deployed directly to your sales reps, or you can take advantage of their outbound on-demand service, which delivers qualified prospect meetings scheduled directly on your sales reps' calendars. Visit connectandsell.com to learn more about how Connect and Sell can start filling your pipeline today. Okay, I'm back with my guest, joining us from Sydney, Australia, Peter Strohkorb. Because I'm fascinated, because I want to have people get a sense that are listening to this is really some of the, a takeaway, some actionable takeaways they can start applying because this is a very important topic, and you've defined it appropriately as we're not aligning, we're collaborating to achieve really common objectives, not necessarily our mutual objective or our respective objectives, but our shared objectives. So, like I said, when they're meeting, who's got the helm?
Well, this is it. We don't actually want somebody to take the helm. The CEO doesn't have time to look after it. If you put either the sales head or the marketing head in charge, it's not going to lead to a good outcome. The best way to do it is to appoint an independent body to come in as a neutral entity. I joke that we come in as Switzerland, and we. So
you're saying yourself?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So we come in.
So
as
hire
a neutral
Peter.
entity. Sorry.
Hire Peter to come in.
Yes, that's right. But
that was my point. We have a facilitator though. There's somebody that facilitates this meeting.
Yes, that's right. And we start off with something very simple, non-disruptive, blame-free, and that is just asking some simple questions of the salespeople and the marketing people in an anonymous online survey. And it's purposely anonymous because we want people to speak out what they really think without getting into trouble for doing so.
Okay, good.
So, and that's done online, so we can do that anywhere in the world, and it doesn't really matter whether you're in Sydney or in Timbuktu or in New York. It can be done anywhere in the world. To fill in the survey only takes on average 8 minutes, so it's not going to take a salesperson away from their day job, and it gives us really deep insight into the closeness or otherwise between sales and marketing, and also allows people to address some specific issues that they have anonymously. Now, that is usually just a quick exercise, and included in that exercise is a review of the findings with the executive team. So we can actually play back to them, this is what your people said, and here's where we see the quick win opportunities, and here's where we see the gaps and the bigger challenges, and here's a plan on how you can overcome it. And by the way, here's an ROI estimation of what's in it for you if you actually do this, right? So anybody can go to the peterstrohkorb.consulting.com website under the tab What's in it for me. There are 2 online calculators that you can do anytime yourself. Doesn't take a long time. You don't have to leave your email address. You don't have to leave any contact details. You won't be spammed and you won't be followed up. But in your own time, you can go and have a look at what's in it for me in terms of the financial benefits. And the second one is how badly or how well are our sales and marketing teams collaborating in my organization according to me today.
So with the ROI
Yes.
calculator, so what are the bases, what are the factors that you're looking at that generate an ROI for a company in investing in this methodology?
Yeah, so the ultimate outcome is that we accelerate sales, that we increase the sales productivity. And how do you measure that? Well, you say, if we can have X% of more sales, or X% faster sales, or X% more revenue because of we're selling faster, better, sooner, then what does it mean to our top line, and what does it mean to our bottom line, and what does it mean to the commission of the individual sales rep? So it's a relatively simple and straightforward formula that basically says, if we have X revenue today at X margin and with X number of salespeople, if we tweak that and we move the dial by just a few percentage points, so the standard is 5%. So we're not even talking about 10, 20, 30%. We're just saying just by 5%, what difference will it make to my organization? And I can input my own numbers and see what the result is. And I'll tell you now that it can be significant, and it's a real eye opener for people.
Well, interesting. It sort of stimulates the question in my mind is that there probably are more than one way, though, you could generate that 5%.
Absolutely, yes.
So, I mean, it's not just necessarily sales marketing collaboration. So I guess the question I'd have for you is what is it that you put in there from the benefits and the value they receive from the increased collaboration of sales and marketing that drive that extra 5%?
How do we get it?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a number of ways. Let me just give you 2 examples. One is that all sorts of research shows that I think IDC was the latest one that's saying that less than 30% of a sales rep's time is spent on selling.
Okay.
So then 2 questions arise. One is, what the hell are they spending the other percentage of their time on? And what would happen if we gave them more time to sell, if we freed up their time for selling? So just one small example is that on average, 17% of a sales rep's time is spent on either looking for or modifying marketing content for their presentations and customer proposals and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, I've seen a number as high as 40% for that.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. So on average, it's 17 according to our research. It may be different in different organizations, but there's no denying that there's a fair amount of time by sales reps spent on either looking for or modifying the content that they receive from marketing. And I'm not talking about proposals really, I'm talking about more about presentation material, PowerPoints and stuff, where I say, I don't really like what marketing says here. I'll put this other stuff in that I think is going to be more interesting for my client or for my prospect. So imagine a scenario now where marketing actually has a good understanding of what the sales reps really need, rather than coming up with a standard template that supports the marketing message but doesn't really support the sales message. So if that task of preparing that presentation and to create something that's actually suitable for the salespeople more broadly, if that was left to marketing, then that would free up those 17, or as you said, 40% of a rep's time to do more selling. And what would that do to your top line and to your bottom line? Well, you could address more prospects. You could get back to more suspects. You could hopefully close more sales. So in any case, it would free up the sales rep's time to do more selling if marketing supported sales and took away those tasks that marketing could actually do for sales rather than sales doing instead of marketing. That's one example.
Let me ask you a question about that, because and I'm not necessarily doubting it, but I've sort of a different question is if you do free up more time for salespeople, do they really devote that to selling? I mean, you've been a salesperson. I've been a salesperson. The number really hasn't changed substantially, I don't think, over a period of time, even before technology existed in sales the way it does today, is that it seems like there's just sort of this level that sales reps get to. And, it's not necessarily sales development reps, which have to make, metrics for, 50 contacts a day and so on. But, the account execs, account managers, boy, I just don't see that number changes a lot based on suddenly we're making information much more readily available to them. They don't have to modify it. I still think there'll be other reasons why they don't end up selling. What do you think?
Well, I think if that's true, then all the other sales acceleration products and services that are on the market are all in vain, because we must have hit an invariable threshold at which we can't accelerate any further. And I don't believe that. I think that what's happening now is the salespeople are under pressure like they've never been before. The demands on them are increasing. The sales quotas are going up, and they just don't. One thing that's not going up is the time that's available to them to actually devote to creating those sales outcomes. So anything that we can do to free up their time to actually spend on their core tasks of selling and being in touch with the customer and promoting the organization will lead to a positive outcome. The obviously it's up to the individual sales rep. If I'm a lazy sales rep and I'd rather go and finish work early because I've got more time, then that's one thing. But if I have a target to make and I've not hit my quota yet and I'm under pressure to perform, do I really want more time available to do that?
Well, I think the question is, would more time help in that environment? See, that's why I said early on, I think sales productivity is, if you really want to understand sales productivity, it's really an issue of productivity. Let's say, and I'll do it per hour. That's how I measure it, is per hour. Because then, even if they never sell more than 30% of their time is devoted to selling, if I can make that 30% more productive, something's always going to come up to distract people. So I think me personally, and this is what I work with teams on, and I've written about, is we want to get that productivity per hour up, because we know it's 30%, 40%. It's just not going to change substantially. It may change in the margins, but the same token, the value to the company at the end of the day isn't going to be much higher if you have their unit productivity higher versus their sort of spread productivity over a number of units.
Yeah, I would probably look at it in this way. If I have an extra, 17% is the average that the salespeople spend on looking for or modifying marketing content. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, 17%. But if you
sure, it's one day a week.
It's one working day a week. Yeah, nearly. It's 6.5 hours, right? And that's substantial. So imagine even if I can't accelerate the sales cycle, so the time it takes between making contact with the target organization and bringing them to a concluded sale, even if I can't reduce the time to do that, by having more time, I can engage more clients and prospects. So I can actually put more prospects into the top of the funnel and work on them simultaneously rather than having to wait until I finish one and then do the other. So freeing up more time doesn't necessarily speed up the sales cycle, but it does give me the opportunity to put more, to address more clients and prospects.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So let's go back to marketing then for a second. So yeah, that's one way they can help.
Well, I was going to give you a second example.
Oh, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So the second example is what some people have called lifting the middle. So let me explain that. In most organizations, you have a sales force where there's a small band of high performers that, as we say, bring home the bacon every month, and you can rely on them hitting their targets consistently. There's a largest middle section of those people that are so, getting near the targets but never quite achieving it, but doing okay by and large. And then there's a smaller band in the bottom that of lesser performing salespeople where you sometimes think, should we even keep them? And numerically speaking, what happens is that a lot of organizations really focus on the top 10% of performers and try to get them to increase their productivity and to get more out of them. If you look at it rationally, and it's very easy to draw to look at some mathematic formulas, I can show you that by lifting the middle mediocre performers by just 5% will give you a better return on your investment than if you try to lift the top performers by 10%, even though they're the top performers, simply because of their numbers. There's more scale in the middle. So by having a better understanding of how the marketing team can support the sales force and how the sales force can better support the marketing team, they can work together and lift that productivity of the middle team by just a small percentage points, but it'll make a huge difference to the organization overall.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. And I think that, a way for people to look at that in addition, another perspective is to say, your marginal return on investment on people that are near the peak of their productivity is just logically is going to be, set aside the math for a second, because the math works to support what you say.
Yes.
But just from a logic standpoint, your odds of getting another 10% improvement out of people already performing at 100%, let's say, much less than your odds of getting 5% of improvement out of people that are operating at 75 or 80%.
Yeah, there's a human cost as well, because if you really harass the top performers to do better, that they may just exercise their choice and go somewhere else.
Well, you would think with top performers, you're not really harassing them, and you have to assume the top performers, to some degree, are top because they are self-inspired, self-motivated, and aren't putting any limits on their actions anyway. That's what I'm saying. That investing more in them is unlikely to produce as big a return because they're already not maxing, but operating closer to max capacity.
Yeah, and you get a much better result overall by trying to lift the middle than trying to get the top performing even better.
Yeah, I agree. And so that's where some of the things you talked about, some solutions with the collaboration with marketing really come into play.
Okay, now talking about something commonsensical, may I just point something out as well?
Sure.
So often we have the marketing team sitting together in head office, sort of clumping together, as I call it, and dealing with a distributed sales force. So we've got the salespeople in different states and sometimes in different countries, and they're not always sitting at head office. Whereas traditionally the marketing team sitting at head office, clumping together, as I said, that alone creates this sort of us and them type attitude. What would they know? And a really good way to overcome that is by actually empowering the sales force to be the eyes and ears of the marketing team. What do I mean by that? Well, marketing is putting out messages through, online and the website and social media and all those sort of media. But they don't really know how it resonates with their intended target audience. Whereas the salespeople are at the front line and they talk to the customers all the time, and they can say, well, look, this piece of collateral you gave us, this messaging that you gave us, this campaign that you gave us works really well, except for ... So if the sales force can be empowered to critique the output that they're receiving from marketing, not to criticize, but to critique in a constructive way, then marketing can get that feedback from, not just the more vocal sales reps, shall we call them, but from the entire sales force more broadly speaking. They can make a much better informed decision on how to better support the sales force. So in this way, the sales force can support marketing to keep them informed what works and what doesn't work and how things can be done better in a constructive way. And marketing can take that information and turn that around to sales and say, thanks for the information, guys. Here's what we've done with it. And here's the new campaign, or here's the new slogan, or here's the new brochure, whatever it is. And that we create what I call a virtuous cycle of collaboration.
Oh, I love the virtuous cycle.
Yeah, we stop the finger pointing and we just go, guys, how can we help you to help us?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it almost gets back to that initial meeting, is you have to have buy-in on both sides, that they're really, as much as they have sort of respective objectives in terms of their individual work, in terms of sales and generating number of leads and so on the marketing side, is they have a common objective, which is that customer.
Yeah.
And that common objective has to be served, and you have to start the conversation, build some trust, get them to know you, like you, trust you, so that when the salesperson does engage with them, they're in the midst of a conversation that they can continue and take to its end point.
That's right. It needs to be consistent.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, good. Well, we're unfortunately running out of time, so we're going to move to the last segment of the show. That's great information. We'll give you a chance here to tell people how to find your book. Yes. But before we do, it's got some standard questions I ask all my guests. And the first one's a hypothetical scenario that I pose. I put you, you're the hero of this story, is you've just been hired as a new sales leader at a company whose sales have sort of stalled out for a second. They're a little bit stuck in the mud. They don't know where to go. Looking for you for direction to turn things around. So what 2 things would you do your first week on the job that could have the biggest impact?
Okay, so what I find consistently is that there's plenty of ideas. If we have problems in an organization, what I consistently find is that there's plenty of ideas hiding within the organization on how to overcome them, but they're not being brought out. And one thing that the OneTEAM Method does is it gives everybody a voice. And I tell you now that often the meekest people, the ones that are not in head office, the ones that are in some regional branch office, often have the best ideas on how to overcome a particular problem, but they just don't feel empowered to speak out. Mm-hmm. And just simply asking them their opinion actually frees them up to say, okay, here's what I think, blah, right? and it's amazing what nuggets of gold you uncover when you actually ask them. So one of the first things I would do is go around and say, what ideas have you got that nobody's been listening to, ever? The second thing I would do is to stop focusing on how can I get my guys more training, how can I make them more effective through technology, how can I get, do whatever the standard answer is, and say, what support mechanisms are there available to help my guys do better? And what customer insights do we have that actually help us to make that decision? Because the second thing that I always find is, and disappoints me time and time again, is that organizations seem to think that running surveys gives them a voice of the customer. But you think about it, surveys get answered by people who feel like answering. So they are what I call the vocal minority. And they're not always representative of the entire sample of customers. So the one way to get the truth out of the customer is to actually not have them asked by the account manager or the business development manager, but by a neutral entity, not on an online survey, but actually in a face-to-face conversation with them in an interview style, to say what did you like, what don't you like, what do competitors do that you really like, would like us to do as well, and what are some things that really annoy us when we do them to you, and again, by bringing in a neutral entity that gives them anonymity. Thank you. That really helps them to speak freely what they really think, and you get the true picture. And again, just like asking the meeker people in the organization, asking customers anonymously brings out nuggets of gold, and you hear them to say things that you've never heard them say before directly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's a great suggestion for people is as much as the online tools are quick and dirty in terms of doing surveys, if you really want to know, either you're going to go out and meet people yourselves or use a third party, as you said, that is accustomed and skilled at asking questions of customers that actually customers, I find, and I've used this type of approach before, is customers really respond to it because it gives them a chance to talk about themselves, right? So they want to show their expertise, their wisdom, their knowledge, and they really appreciate being asked.
Yeah, that's right. They want to voice their opinion. And I tell you what, we've more than once rescued an at-risk account simply by having been brought in and asking the customer what they think, their opinion, Yeah. So the customer says, "Oh, you do care, Fantastic.
Yeah, surprising, right? Yeah, you actually do like me. All right. All right, well, I've got some final questions for you here. I've got some rapid-fire questions. Give me one-word answers. You can elaborate a little bit if you wish. The first one is, when you're selling, you yourself are selling, what's your most powerful sales asset?
My most powerful sales asset is that I create an environment where there's no pressure. Now, this may be totally unorthodox, but I try to remove this usual dance whereby you as the buyer try to hide from me how willing you are to buy and what you're really looking for, and I push you towards a sale. That's not really, in this day and age, it's not really a fantastic way of going about things. So the first thing I do is I try to strike an upfront contract, as I call it. And the upfront contract is, you will tell me the truth and I won't push you. Right? So the idea is that we become partners in this, whereby I can help you to make an informed decision, and then you may go with my offer or not, if it makes sense. But there's no point in me pressuring you to close the deal by the end of the week, by the end of the month, or by the end of the quarter. And for you, there's no point dancing around forever trying to hide things from me in order to extract additional information. Whereas if I can offer you value, and you can make a free decision in terms of whether that value is the right type of value for you, and you want to move forward to a transaction, we can actually act together as partners. I help you to make an informed decision. That's it.
Okay. So, next question. Who's your sales role model?
Okay, so I used to be a big fan of Neil Rackham. I really like the idea of spin selling and talking about solving problems. Now, time has moved on a bit, and there's now all these other things that, like the challenger sale, the disruptive sale, the provocative sale, and content marketing has come in. But I think essentially people still buy from people, certainly in B2B and certainly in the more complex sales, because I'm not just buying a pencil for 5 cents and then never seeing you. I'm actually buying a relationship that may last several years. So I want to know exactly who I'm dealing with and what will happen if things go wrong, and can I rely on you? So your solution may be the best solution, but if I don't like you as a person, I may not buy from you. So the important thing is that we find out what the customer really needs, and then present them the ideal solution, including the interhuman relationship that they will buy once they purchase from us.
So the answer to who your sales role model is Neil Rackham?
Well, Neil came up with Neil came up with the...
2 words. Give me somebody's name.
Well, it's not Jack Welch, but this...
All right. Let me go to the next one then. What, besides your own book, what's one book that every salesperson should read?
I think read The Challenger Sale, even though there's a lot of hyperbole in there, at least my opinion, and quite a few oversimplifications. If you don't look at it as a sales methodology, but if you look at it as a go-to-market model, it's actually quite valuable.
Okay.
And it helps you to think about things differently.
All right. So, tough question. What's music is on your playlist right now?
So I'm a child of the 70s, so I'm a bit of an old timer when it comes to music. I like sort of mainstream rock bands like Kiss and ZZ Top and those guys, much to the dismay of my wife, who likes much more contemporary music, and my kids say it's daddy music as well.
Kiss is daddy music. There you go.
And it's not a compliment.
Yeah. All right. So last question. What's the one question you get asked most frequently by salespeople?
How can I hit my targets?
And the answer is, in 20 words or less, the answer is
the OneTEAM Method. Of course.
All right. There we go. All right, Peter, I want to thank you for being on the show. My guest has been Peter Strohkorb. Tell folks how they can find out more about you.
Well, the easiest way is to go to the website. So that's peterstrohkorbconsulting.com. I would encourage you to go to the What's in it for me tab and to have a look at those calculators. There's all sorts of other material on the website. Just knock yourself out. We've even got a section there especially for marketers and another section there especially for salespeople, just to inform each of them what's in it for them and to get the conversation started.
Great. And all that information will be on the show notes page on my website, andypaul.com, if you want to get the details. So, Peter, again, thank you for being on the show.
Andy, it was a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you. So remember, friends, make it a part of your day, every day, to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. Easy way to do that is to accelerate this podcast a part of your daily routine. Listen to it first thing in the morning, on your commute, in the gym, or make it a part of your morning sales huddle once you get into the office, because then you'll make sure you don't miss any of my conversations with top business experts like my guest today, Peter Strohkorb, who shared his expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your sales. So thanks for joining us. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.